What up, my people? I'm back today with some more houseplant help, and I'm going to be showing you how to transplant an orchid. All right, so I've got a really nice orchid here. Basically, there are, in my opinion, 3 steps to transplanting an orchid. I know people are often nervous about transplanting orchids, and I know it is easy to mess up your orchid by transplanting it. Orchids are sensitive, the roots are sensitive, but if you follow these 3 steps, it's going to be easy and it's not going to stop it from blooming or mess up the blooming schedule that it's on at all. All right, so I'll give you 3 steps and make sure you watch till the 3rd step because I'm going to save the best for last, the most important step for last. And before I get to step 1, please subscribe. I'm trying to grow this channel and be able to do houseplant help full time, so please subscribe, my fam. I love you guys. All right, so step 1 to transplanting an orchid, you need to have the right type of pot to transplant it into. Okay, if you have a glazed ceramic pot or something that holds in moisture, it's not going to work out well. All right, it's not going to work well for an orchid. The roots need to breathe. You know, orchids naturally will grow on, at least these type of orchids will naturally grow on the branches of trees. So if you have it in a pot that can't breathe and that really keeps the moisture in, it's going to be only a matter of time until your orchid roots rot out. Okay, so here's the pot I'm going to transplant it into. I think terracotta is always best. You know, right now I have it just in a normal terracotta pot with no liner or anything, but the ideal setup for an orchid is to have a terracotta pot with a hole in the bottom. You need good drainage, and then have an orchid pot that goes right inside like that. That is the best possible combo. That's the best way to transplant an orchid into a fresh pot, is to have one of these, you know, because if you look at this, it's got holes on the bottom and it's got holes on the side. This is specifically made for orchids. So I would highly recommend, if you want to give your orchid the best chance of surviving, of growing big, of flowering as much as possible, use one of these pots. All right, and it fits perfectly inside of there. So someone gave me this, but I would have to imagine that you can buy sets where it's a terracotta pot with one of these that fits perfectly inside of it. I would imagine on Amazon you could buy them. So I would just search for orchid pot with liner. I bet you'll find something good. So now that we've got the pot, we are ready for step 2, the second important factor in transplanting an orchid, which is the soil, or the soil mixture. I mean, it's not even really soil, it's the planting medium, I guess you'd say, the planting mixture. Because orchids, if you just plant them into normal potting soil, they're not going to do well. Just like I was saying with the pot, if you transplant it in a ceramic pot that holds moisture, it's not going to do well. If you transplant it into just a normal potting soil, it's not going to do well. It's going to hold the moisture too much, and it's going to eventually rot the roots out. So with orchids, you want to use a very light mixture. So I think, you know, some people will do straight bark and just transplant them, or just pot orchids directly into just bark. I've seen people who use just moss, sphagnum moss, and those are all right. You can do just a straight up bark, straight up moss. That will work, but I think you want to mix both of those and add in some pumice stones and add in some charcoal. All right, that's the best possible mix, in my opinion, because it's going to make the soil mixture, the potting mixture, as airy and as light as possible. You know, if you have just bark, it's going to eventually condense and it's going to stay wet. But if you have pumice stone in there, it's going to create little pockets of air and where the water can run through, and where it's going to stop the bark from condensing. Or the moss, same thing. Especially with sphagnum moss, if you use just sphagnum moss, over time it will eventually kind of like harden into a brick, and you don't want that. So the pumice stone will prevent that, and the charcoal will prevent that. And charcoal is antimicrobial, antifungal. So charcoal will really help to prevent root rot, not just by creating, a lighter soil and for more air to get into the soil, but it actually will stop fungus from growing to begin with. Okay, so there are a bunch of good pre-made mixtures. You can buy all the stuff separately and make it yourself, but I just use the Fertilome orchid mixture, the Fertilome orchid mixture, and I've added in a little bit of cocoa, the cocoa coir, just to kind of like make it last a little bit longer. So I've got the Fertilome mixture, which has charcoal, pumice stone, and bark. So I think you can't go wrong if you just use the Fertilome mixture. You don't need to add anything to it. And that is a tremendous blend. I think it's perfect for all orchids, and it's also good for houseplants and especially aeroids. If you just add in like a couple handfuls of Fox Farm Happy Frog soil, that's gonna be perfect for potting up philodendrons, anthuriums, monsteras, any of the aeroid epiphytic plants. I think you could use this orchid mixture just with a little bit of nice potting soil added. So it's always good to have some of that Fertilome mixture on hand. It's a tremendous blend. They're a great company. So shout out Fertilome. Love you guys. Yeah, so that's the second step, is the soil, or the second key thing, the potting mixture. All right, so once we've got the perfect pot, we've got the perfect potting mixture, the third and most important step, all right? And if you've liked this video so far, please subscribe. Please, fam, I need to pull myself up out of poverty right now. You know how it is. I've spent all my money on houseplants. You guys understand. I've spent all my savings on plants. I got to figure something out. So please subscribe. Thank you guys. Love you guys. So the third step, the most important step to transplanting orchids, is to be very gentle when you do it. All right? Because if you use the right pot and use the right potting mixture, but then you just pour the thing out and shove it in there, you're going to damage the roots and you're going to delay the next blooming cycle. If you damage the roots when you're transplanting it, it might not bloom for a year or two. But I know if you're gentle, you can transplant an orchid without disturbing the blooming cycle at all, and it will still bloom within 6 months or 3 months even. You just got to be gentle, okay? So that is the most important thing when transplanting an orchid, is to not damage the plant, not damage specifically the roots when you're doing it, all right? So you see I'm going from this size pot to this size pot. All right, so I'm gonna fill the bottom of the pot to about there. That's the first thing I'm gonna do. So get a nice couple handfuls, try to get, an even amount of bark, charcoal, and stone. And like I said, I've got a little of this cocoa mixed in too. So I think that's a good start. I've just got it filled to about there. I think that's gonna work well. All right, the next thing you need to do, very gently, pour off as much as you can. All right, just kind of shake it like that, and you see it's not only pouring off the old stuff, but it's taking the plant out slowly but surely. So there we go. You see, this plant, it didn't have a crazy root structure to begin with. So this is an orchid I'd kind of forgotten about. It was tucked in the corner of this window, and I think it was getting too much light and not enough water. So that's why I'm transplanting this one, is because I just want to give it some extra love and get it back to, being in the healthiest possible conditions, the best possible conditions. So it's not that the roots were so huge on this that I had to transplant it. It's more that I realized I had forgotten about this orchid, and I want to bring it back. I want to give it the best possible chance to bloom as soon as possible. All right, so you can see it doesn't have much roots. I'm gonna have to add some more. So Gentle. Being very gentle is the key here. All right, I think that should be about the right height. All right, and so then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just kind of hold it in the spot that I want it to be. I'm not gonna, just put it in there and just pour soil on, because there's like a cavity kind of underneath the roots. You can see it's like this. So when I set it down, this whole spot is not gonna be filled in. So basically what you wanna do is just hold it in the position and at the height that you want it to be, and then pour in the soil around it very gently. All right, and we're gonna just slowly fill in around the roots. And take your time with this. You don't wanna mess up the roots. There's no rush. You wanna just fill in that empty space around the roots. And you want it to be, packed in enough that it's not gonna just fall right out of the pot. You want it to stay in place, but you don't want to damage the roots. So just kind of gently be tapping that soil down in there so it's really filling in the spot, that spot under the roots. Need a little more. And I'm making a bit of a mess here, but that's all right. A little bit of cocoa on the table. A little bit of cocoa never killed anybody, right? Am I right, guys? All right, so look, it's starting to stay in place. I'm almost done here. Just kind of get it evenly in there. This is gonna be a tremendous orchid, guys. I can't wait until this blooms again. I'll do an update when it blooms, because this is a beautiful, beautiful orchid. One of the finest ones I have, to be honest. All right, I think we're done.